Hi everyone, welcome to my channel or welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, please subscribe if you haven't yet already. It is a red button down beneath me somewhere, and if you click that, you will be subscribed. It's also a little bell next to that, and if you click that, you'll get an alert every time I upload new content. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. That would make me very happy. Today is the 8th in a series. It's hard to believe that it has already been 8, where we talk about cult beauty products and American Horror Story. And this is focusing on Season 7, Episode 6, Midwestern Assassin. The palette that I'm focusing on today is the Lorac Pro Palette. So if you'd like to see how I got this look and do some general, little bit long-winded talking about American Horror Story, Midwestern Assassin, please keep watching. All right, I've already moisturized. Going to put on some face primer, and then I'll put on my eye primer because I have a giant situation happening here, and I want to put primer on my face before I deal with that. I'll come back to that in just a second. Going in with Nars Smudge Proof Eye Primer, and this week I made notes that I printed, so I don't have to actually have a computer in front of me, which is great. This week I think it probably makes the most sense to go sequentially, and I did grab a lot of the dialogue. There was a lot of dialogue that was good, especially the stuff that Sally, Mayor Winningham, had to say. So we begin at the opening rally, which, wow, was just a lot. And I did watch both the edited version as it aired live, and then I watched the original version on iTunes. And while you can see a difference, I don't know what's worse. I kind of feel like sometimes it's worse to leave everything to your imagination. They were both really startling. I remember I was watching Buffy when it originally aired, and there was an episode called Earshot, I think, and that was set to be released right after Columbine, but it had already been produced a long time ago. And I forget what they did. I feel like they pulled it for a while and they played it ultimately, but I feel like it wasn't actually played in the order that it was. It wasn't one of those canon episodes where there was something happening in the episode that you needed for the next one, I don't think. But yeah, I think that they showed it later with like a note at the beginning. And then we see Allie with the gun. I'm gonna go in with Buff, which we all kind of think, oh my gosh, how did that happen? Then Allie on the phone with Ivy. I think that Ivy hears everything that Meadow is saying, that everyone's involved in the cult and blah, blah, blah. Then Meadow gets captured and Ivy's still there, and then Dr. Rudy calls. Still not clear about whether or not Dr. Rudy's involved. I feel like he probably isn't, and that'll come up again later. But he says to her all the crazy things that she's saying. Those are the things that would possibly make her lose custody of Oz. Light brown. And I really don't think he's involved. I don't know also if there's a difference between committing yourself or being committed to, not to a psych hospital where you're getting 5150'd and you're being taken there. And maybe that's what the difference is. Maybe if you admit yourself somewhere for personal reasons, it's different than getting 5150'd because someone realizes you're a danger to yourself or others. Cool gray. Okay, and then Allie rescues Meadow. And Allie seems like she's getting pretty brave and like just not staying in the house. And I actually think that that's probably consistent with her character. I think that she just got pushed too far, and she feels like she's being gaslighted. She doesn't feel like she's crazy anymore. She feels like she's being gaslighted, and that her actual experiences, just blending, are really happening. That her phobias are accurate representations of what's happening in the world around her. And after all of this, and I will kind of go into all the things that Meadow says, I'm going to go in with navy just in my crease. And this is one of those small Real Techniques blending brushes. But I wonder if it seems now that all of the crazy making that's happening for Allie is happening because Ivy doesn't want to be with her, and Ivy wants custody of Oz. That seems like a lot of effort to go through for that one kind of primary thing, but I guess it remains to be seen. I'm getting a little skipping here. I'm not really focused, so I'm going to just blend the heck out of this. Okay, and then they go to the butchery. And at the butchery, we learn that Ivy set up everything for the guinea pig explosion. They had a lot of projects, the dead birds, the things in the tanks in the trucks that were going by was just water, just to make people scared and to soften them for the takeover, is what Meadow says. And Allie's response is basically that Ivy isn't a joiner, that Ivy wouldn't be in a cult, that Ivy doesn't believe in anything. And Meadow's response is, that's how they get you. That's kind of how it starts. If you already believed in something, there wouldn't be any room for him. And then we see Kai on television. And all of those things were apparently to make Allie crazy. Going in with silver on my lid. Actually, I will use a little Fix Plus. And Meadow says some pretty cruel things. She says, maybe she just hates you. I don't know. And the reference to voting for Jill Stein too, which, wow. But obviously it runs deeper and we find out more about that later. Allie says, this is insane. I'm not insane. This is insane. My wife would not join a cult, all that stuff. It's a really interesting scene where I think for the first time we see Allie really stepping up and advocating for herself. And it is kind of a magical moment. And if you haven't yet watched Gaslight, and I'm specifically thinking about the Ingrid Bergman movie, Gaslight, I highly recommend that you do. Because when she discovers that she's being gaslighted, it is probably one of my favorite scenes in film ever. When she confronts the person who's gaslighting her. And the things that Allie says don't really compare to that, but it's not too far away because she's basically saying, I'm not crazy. Now I'm thinking about the Suicidal Tendencies song, Institutionalized. Oh, my brain. Go in with Snow on my inner corner. A little more blending. I might come back and do more of this later. I'm getting more transfer than I want, but as long as it's symmetrical, I really don't care. But I feel like I'm missing some color. I'm gonna go back in with Jade on the outside. That's what I was missing. A little bit of fallout from that, but that's why I do my foundation last. All right. We also learned that the protesters were hired by Kai. Makeup Forever, full cover concealer, only on my new little friend here. I'm gonna use a lighter concealer under my lid. So we learn that, yeah, the crowd scene with all of the protesters was orchestrated by Kai. And I know that there were always reports in the news about fake protests, and that probably was a nod to that. But I actually believe that there probably would have been a protest. Like the whole Justice for Pedro thing seemed really familiar. And I know, obviously I don't know that all of those protesters are legitimate, but I know I was. Not at that one, but there certainly have been protests that I've been at that I know that I was there, and the people that I was there with were there because we wanted to be there, not because someone paid us to be. So that was interesting. And something else before we move on to kind of the next scenes, which are the flashbacks that we get, where we get more information about Meadow in terms of the cult and what's happened, how she got involved, and how she got disenchanted by it. I'm still wondering how the whole Gone Girl thing happened. And maybe I want to put together a timeline of when things happened. Like, I want to know when that whole episode happened with Harrison out in the street and the blood in the apartment or in the house. I want to know when that happened and if we missed something, because in the times that she's tied up and in the times that we see her in the hole in the ground, there's no blood. I wonder if I guess the blood could have come from the butchery. I'm sure that they have blood. And again, I know it doesn't take that much blood to make it look pretty graphic. So hard to say. And I would like kind of a clear timeline at some point. I'm kind of working on that. And I think I'll probably have to wait until the end to get a full timeline together. But I'm going with a little more face primer. I'm still a little traumatized from holes, just to cover up my pores a little bit more. So I'll take a moment while I'm waiting for this to settle for just a second and go through my notes from the scene. So when we're in the butchery and Meadow is spilling the beans, the first scene that we see is Kai and Meadow on the stairs when she's doing her sketching of the clowns, and Kai really loves what she's doing. And we hear the things that he is saying to her, which are the things that we ultimately hear him say to Ivy. And all the murder that they're doing and the kissing that they're doing, and then she hears Kai say the same thing to Ivy and she's leaving. And I think that this is real. Kai says, what are you doing? She says, I'm leaving. He says, I need you now, Meadow. She says, he says, we're so close to getting everything we want. And she says, no, everything you want. You're so full of shit. I loved you. I'm out. And then to everyone, to Harrison and to Colton, will you open your eyes? I mean, seriously, is Kai the idiot? Or is it us for believing that any of this shit is going to work? Can I just ask you a question? When's the last time a seat in a zoning board led to world domination? I mean, think about it. No one outside this podunk town even knows who the hell you are. This whole thing would be so hilarious if it wasn't so insane. And I think that that's real. I think that she really is disenchanted and feels betrayed by him. And I also will say I've read some things about Evan Peters and the way that he prepped for this. And there's a movie that he said that he watched called Holy Hell that I just recently watched on Netflix. It's about a cult. And I will post it in the description box down below. It's really interesting. No one's dying in that cult, spoiler alert, but it's really manipulative and preys on people when they're vulnerable and scared. And that's when they collect her. And that's when they put her, I guess, in the basement and they tie her up. And Kai says, a cat goes missing and there are posters plastered all over the city. But you, no one's even noticed that you're gone. No one's going to give a shit if you live or die. And then we're back into the present day in the butchery. Put on my foundation. Actually, I'm going to zoom you through my foundation because I want to read. I have the whole little monologue that Sally says at the, man, that was amazing. The Mayor Winningham stuff was, whoo, zoom you through this. All right, Glossier Stretch Concealer in Light under my eyes. This is so lovely and fabulous right now. Yeah, so Mayor Winningham. And that is April 7th. So that might be the most current situation that we have seen. That, well, actually no, obviously, because the suicide, the Mayor Winningham suicide, and the rally that we see at the beginning and the end of the episode, those are all after this town hall meeting. All right, so I'm gonna read this to you. Kai's talking and leaving out some stuff, but he says, Washington, D.C. is not gonna save you when the boogeyman comes, and mark my words, he will not only come, he has come to our little hamlet. The monsters are here, it's time to be scared. And then Mayor Winningham says, bullshit. And excuse me, ma'am, could you stand up for all of us and state your name? Sally Keffler. Miss Keffler, you have a problem with something that I'm saying. And then she says, I think you're a snake oil salesman. And not even a very good one. And the crowd is laughing. And then he says, so there haven't been a series of horrible murders over the past month or so, including the brutal slaying of Councilman Chang. And I wasn't beaten up by a gang of illegals. And then she says, yeah. And then he also says, in Bob Thompson's satanic murder. It's always scarier in Latin. Wasn't broadcast on television. And then she says, overall crime is down 14% from last year and almost 30% from 1980. We need to get serious about finding whoever's responsible for the crimes that you're talking about, but you're just trying to make these people scared. To which Kai says, you're damn right I am. Scared is what's going to keep them safe, traditional and conservative values. And Mayor Winningham says, Sally says, conservative, you think you're conservative? And Kai says, yes, ma'am, I do. Oh my God, I love her so much. I don't want her to be dead. I want more. I want more. She might be one of my favorite American Horror Story characters of all time. She definitely is. Definitely in the top 5. My parents were Reaganites. I interviewed Barry Goldwater for my high school paper. I've seen conservative up close. You're not a conservative. You're a reactionary. You use fear and the fantasy of a time that never was when people left their doors unlocked. People like Mr. Anderson and Trump are not the garbage. They're the flies that the garbage has drawn. It's time that we stop worrying about the flies and we start hauling the garbage away. I can no longer sit by and let another candidacy of fear win another election, which is why I'm officially declaring my candidacy for city council. And then there's some back and forth because the election is officially already, the time to put your nomination in is over. She is not going to be on the ballot. And then she says she's going to be a write-in. She's going to go down and be an official write-in. And we see kind of the same thing that we saw in Kai's face when he says equal power to Beverly, where he seems a little bit scared. And when he realizes that she actually is going to be able to run. He says, I look forward to it, but it's clear that he doesn't. And then she says, not only to him, but kind of quietly, you're going to thank me for this one day. A young man's certainty is also a burden, and I'm going to relieve you of both. So that's a lot. All right, do my brows. I think I can kind of wing my way through this. Not my eye wing, but kind of wing my way through this. There's not as much dialogue here, but then we end up, next scene is interesting, and this must be the house that they live in, because I noticed the Trump and Hillary, the candidacy, what are they called? The flags, not the flags, but the things that you put in your lawn to, why am I blanking on that? But there's one for Trump and one for Hillary. And so that must be the house that Kai and Winter live in. And this is November 9th. And Ivy's freaking out because she saw Gary Longstreet at the election. And she realizes that something really terrible happened to him. And that he was able to vote and that he lost his arm or cut his arm off and everything. And she's freaking out about it. And Winter says, you have to meet my brother. And I was thinking, which one? But obviously Kai. And they go down to the basement, and Ivy seems like reluctant at the beginning. Definitely doesn't want Winter to leave, but she does. And they sit down, and Pinky's extended. And he asks her what she's afraid of, and she says of the president, which is fair. And he basically says, are you afraid that Gary, he uses the name Gary, is going to find out what you did? And I was thinking about, well, Gary's alive. Gary knows what they did, but Gary only knows what happened at the demonstration, at the Hillary thing, because when he grabbed Ivy by the pussy, because they were wearing masks when they kidnapped him and tied him up. So he doesn't know who they are, but Kai does. So that's intimidating for him to do to her, to basically say, you have this thing you're very terrified of, and I know about it. Marc Jacobs Air Blush in Kink and Kisses. I should have used this last week. Yeah, and then we learned that the thing that she is the most, not what you're most afraid of, but he says, what fills your heart with dread? And she says, the thought of laying in bed next to my wife. And she says it so quickly, as though it's something that she's thought of before, something that's certainly been on her mind. And he asks her, since when? And she says, the happiest time of my life, when my son Oz was born. I'm going to use Beauty Bakery liquid lipstick in Mon Chéri. And the way that this works is you don't put liner on, you just put this on, and you put on a couple of layers and you let them dry a little bit. So I'm going to speed you through me putting it on, and then I'll put on a little bit more later. With this, you also don't use any liner, which is a little strange. It bleeds a little bit, and sometimes I put liner in the end on the outside, but this stuff stays on all day. You need, it doesn't come with, but you can also purchase a little like tub of makeup removing like lip wipes, and I use those for sure. In fact, when it dries down, I'll show you on my hand how smudge proof, budge proof it really is. Don't use it all the time because it is drying. And it's one of those weird formulas where it makes your lips feel tacky even though it's not transferring anywhere, which I've never really understood. Curling and then roller lash. So yeah, so the day that she started to hate Allie is the day that Oz was born. So we know that Allie is the birth mother. We don't know who the birth father is or who the biological father is. I suspect that's going to come, but at least we now know that it's not Michael from season 1. And man, they should have gone to see a therapist back then. Because seriously, if I know people who are not open to going to see a therapist, and whatever, I get that. I am very open to therapy, and I have been for a long time. But I definitely know people who aren't, and I respect that. I respect that some people just don't want to do it, and I also am a firm believer in the notion that you can't force somebody into it until they're ready, because it's not really going to do them any good unless they're ready to be open and to do the work. But at this point, I'm going to put another layer. Speed you through it. Sorry. All right, and I will show you when it dries down that it really is transfer proof. There was a scene when Ivy was holding Oz and Allie was waiting to do some breastfeeding, and Ivy said, could you pump? And Allie says he's not going to want a rubber nipple, sweetheart, not when he's getting the real thing, and don't even think about formula. And I mean, whatever, make your decisions about formula, not formula, but that's just not kind, I think. I think that, and she did a lot of single pronouns like my baby. Allie was doing a lot of that, and that's not cool because it's their baby, our baby, not my baby. And then she says there's so much more. This is what Ivy's saying. Her entitled bullshit problems. The last straw was a selection when she voted for Jill Stein. But it seems like she's really not putting much value on these phobias that Allie has. And then Kai asks if she's ever thought about murder. And Ivy says no, because she doesn't want to put Oz through that trauma. And she doesn't want to lose custody. And Kai says something about his sister and would she be like interested in a relationship with his sister, which is you can't swap one person for another. But she says she needs custody of her child. And then Kai says, well, then we'll just have to make sure that no court ever grants her custody. And that seems like the reason that they're telling us about for the collective gaslighting of Allie. It seems a little bit implausible. I'm wondering if there's anything more that's happening, but gaslighting her so that Ivy will get custody just seems like a lot to do. Then we're at Dr. Vincent's office and Allie is leaving Meadow, which seems strange that Dr. Vincent is there at all. And she leaves Meadow to go to see Sally. And I have the things that Sally says too. My understanding is that Evan Peters is going to be playing Charles Manson and David Koresh and Jim Jones and Andy Warhol, which I think is next week. And so she gets into Sally's house. I don't know why everybody answers the door. Granted, Sally answers the door with a gun. But when people are just knocking at my door, I don't answer my door. I'm not a door answerer unless I know someone's coming. At any rate, so she's in and Allie tells her everything, that there's a cult, and it sounds crazy. And that was Kai's point, I guess, in the beginning, was to make it come from her mouth and tell her the truth. Sometimes when you tell somebody the truth, it sounds like the least plausible thing anyway. So she tells Sally everything and Sally believes her. So Sally says, as a reaction when she hears all of this, I'm not surprised. This is the kind of shit that happens whenever the patriarchy is threatened. Manson was a product of the 60s, women's lib, the pill, Jim Jones too. It's no coincidence that Koresh went up against Janet Reno. David Koresh came to be because of Janet Reno. Men are told their whole lives who they're supposed to be, so they never figure out who they really are. The kid that I'm running against is no good. Every society that's ever chosen to lead with their fear has undone itself. If even half of what you're saying is true and it helps me win the election, then I'm willing to walk with you down this road a while. And at some point she's lighting up a joint. You came to the right place. Nothing shocks me. I went to Berkeley, which is like 3 miles that way. I get it, but ha ha ha. And then the cult comes in and attacks her. And bless her heart, she stands up with a gun and says, please, one of you assholes make a move. I'm desperate to make an example of someone. And she ends up on the ground and Kai says to her, you know what the problem is with you overeducated elites? Oh, and at this point, Allie has run and she's hiding in a bathroom. You overestimate your ability to control the world. And Sally says, killing me is not going to stop the march of progress. She says, this is a spasm in democracy. You're nothing but a passing fever. And then Kai says, and you're the last of the intellectuals. Knowing stuff has no value anymore. When the answer is in my back pocket or sitting on my desk, the youth has figured it out. The future will be filled with beautiful idiots who just want to feel. And then he realizes that her Facebook page is open and says, Facebook, you are old. And he writes a suicide note. And in the suicide note, he makes reference to what Kennedy said about asking not what your country can do for you, but for what you can do for your country. And he posts it. And then before they kill her, she says, no one's going to believe any of that. And Kai says, of course they will. It's on Facebook. They're leaving. Allie has screamed, I think, from hearing the gunshot. And Ivy's going down the hall to investigate. And Ivy, she's wearing a mask, but she must recognize her body. So she doesn't kill her, which is interesting. Because she could have, actually. That would have been easy if she really does want her dead. So Allie comes back to Dr. Vincent's office. And she's going on about this cult. And she seems like she's having a bit of a psychotic break. And when we see the flashback from the conversation that Dr. Rudy had with Meadow, it seems like they don't know each other. And it seems like Meadow doesn't know that Kai and Dr. Vincent are brothers. So I'm wondering more and more if Dr. Vincent is a part of the cult. Maybe he's not. Or maybe he's just very far removed and no one's seen him, like he's Willy Wonka or the Wizard of Oz. Someone that people don't really see very often. But that makes me think that they don't know who he is. And then we end up at the rally that began everything with Meadow killing herself and saying this is the face of true love. And then we get a flashback to when she was tied up, after she heard Kai saying all the things to Ivy that he had said to her. What we heard him say before was you are nothing, but this monologue continues a little bit. And he says, you are nothing, and in the eyes of the unenlightened world, but to me you're everything. And this is one of these things that I think you see in cults, that I'm the only one that's seeing how amazing you are and there's something special about you and different from anybody else, which is the reason why she wanted to be with him in the first place, until she heard him say the exact same thing to Ivy. You're the only one who sees me, who's not afraid to see the truth. You were right about all of it. We have to accelerate our thinking, get the entire country to pay attention, elevate me to the national level, and only you can do that. I need to be assassinated. And she's basically saying, I can't kill you. And he's basically saying, you know, you won't actually kill me, but you'll attempt to kill me. And he doesn't say it, but she says, I won't be able to lie to the police. And he says, no, you won't have to. It'll be our eternal secret, our everlasting love. And that's to be understood that she's supposed to kill herself after she attempts to kill him. And that's exactly what happens. And that's where it ends. So some things that I would like to recap. One is, we know now, I think we're supposed to know now why everyone is gaslighting Allie, but I still think there must be more to it, because it seems like a lot of concerted effort on everybody's part, just to drive this one person crazy for custody. It seems like at this point they're focusing more on chaos and on spreading their message and less on improving the lives of the people around them. But I don't know, maybe the fact that he used Meadow as a pawn to attempt to kill him and to kill herself was getting Harrison's ask taken care of. And in some ways, maybe that was Meadow's ask getting taken care of, because she, in the end, felt like she was in this important relationship that she was willing to die for. So yeah, we do know who Oz is. We don't know we know who his mother is, but we don't know who his father is. And I don't think that Dr. Vincent is involved, or I'm not sure. But I definitely don't think that Meadow knows who he is and his relationship to Kai and to the cult. We didn't get much from the cop or from Beverly or from Gary. It was mostly the Kai and Allie and Ivy and Meadow show this week. Really heavy, but really good. So thank you so much for watching. A lot to do on YouTube, a lot to do in the world, and I really appreciate that you took some time to spend with me today. Take care, and I'll see you again very soon. Bye. It's me again. I totally forgot to show you how smudge proof this lipstick is. So this has been on for a little while and my hand is clean. It's incredibly transfer proof. Okay, now I'm gonna go. I'll see you soon. Bye.